The marble floor was so clean, it reflected the ceiling lights like an accusation. Each square tile was measured, deliberate, and cold to the touch, a geometry of control. The air itself carried the sterile chill of overconditioned systems, the kind that had never once paused for the discomfort of a human being. Agent Nia Caldwell entered through the revolving glass doors without hurry. Her gait was straight, her coat buttoned at the collar, her left hand steady on the strap of her briefcase. Everything about her movement suggested containment, an equilibrium she had learned to maintain in spaces like this. The fluorescent panels hummed overhead, steady, unrelenting. Inside, the federal building's lobby stretched in long rectangular silence. Security gates gleamed with metal edges, guards posted behind podiums. Each sound, a step, a voice, a cough, seemed to echo too long, as though the architecture had been designed to stretch moments of discomfort. A flag hung on the far wall, unmoving in the conditioned air. She approached the checkpoint. There were 3 stations. 2 were open. At the first, a white man in a grey suit breezed through with a nod. His badge was scanned in a second, the light flashing green before the guard even looked up. At the second, a woman with a tote bag fumbled her ID. The guard smiled politely, helping her. Green again. When Nia stepped forward, the hum of the scanner rose. The guard, young, fair, buzz-cut, face blank with official detachment, took her badge without meeting her eyes. He turned it over once, twice. Then he inserted it into the reader. The small machine blinked red. He frowned, shifted his weight. Tried again. Nia stood still, posture unbroken. The marble beneath her shoes felt cold, almost damp. The air around the checkpoint seemed to contract slightly. "Could you remove it from the holder, ma'am?" His tone was polite, professional. It was also unnecessary. No one else had been asked. She did as told, sliding the card free. The laminate caught the light. A photo, her name, the letters FBI printed beneath. The card was clean, official, without ambiguity. He scanned again. Red, then green. A pause before he handed it back. "Sorry about that," he said, the apology mechanical, as though drawn from a handbook. "Of course," she replied, equally composed, but the pause had already done its work. The moment lingered, suspended in fluorescent hum. The guard pressed a button, unlocking the gate. The metal barrier clicked aside. She passed through without looking back. Yet she felt his eyes on her until she reached the elevator. The elevator doors closed with the slow precision of a vault. Inside, mirrored walls reflected her in quadruplicate, 4 Nias, all identical in posture, but not in patience. She stared straight ahead, refusing to look herself directly in the eye. The fluorescent ceiling light above flickered once briefly, before steadying. A handprint smudge marred the chrome near the panel. It caught her attention more than her own reflection did. Imperfection, accidental but human. She pressed the button for the 7th floor. The light glowed yellow, humming faintly beneath her fingertip. The ascent was soundless except for the mechanical whisper of cables above. She exhaled once, quiet and slow, enough to fog the mirrored surface for a heartbeat. When the fog disappeared, her reflection looked precisely the same. On the 7th floor, the lobby opened into a corridor with beige carpeting, framed government photographs, and an oversized clock that ticked louder than necessary. The hour hand hovered at 8:43. The meeting would begin at 9. She walked past a row of chairs, each identical, black leather, silver legs positioned evenly along the wall. The space smelled faintly of disinfectant and old paper. Her heels tapped rhythmically, marking her movement through the silence like a metronome of self-discipline. At the far end, a reception desk sat behind a glass partition. A woman in a navy blouse looked up from her computer, smile preloaded, professional. "Can I help you?" "Agent Caldwell." "Here for the interagency briefing," the receptionist typed, glancing at the monitor. "You're with the Bureau." A pause, half a second too long. "Right, FBI, room 713, you can wait in the lounge." Nia nodded. The woman's tone was kind enough, but the inflection at "you're with" remained suspended in her mind like a comma that never reached the period. The lounge was small, 4 chairs, a water cooler, a clock identical to the one outside. The television mounted in the corner played a muted news broadcast. Nia sat by the window, back straight, hands resting lightly on her knees. From here she could see the parking lot below, rows of government vehicles lined in perfect symmetry, as though even the asphalt obeyed hierarchy. Two local officers entered, laughing about something low and easy. Their laughter filled the small space an uninvited guest. One glanced at her, gave the quick half-smile of acknowledgement that ends before it begins. They took seats on the far side, continuing their conversation about weekend shifts, about the feds coming in to look over our shoulders. She listened without reacting. The hum of the vending machine behind her rose, merging with the fluorescent buzz. Both sounds layered into a single tone, mechanical judgment, constant and unrelenting. Her badge lay on her lap, thumb grazing its smooth edge. She noticed the faint smudge left from the guard's fingers. For a moment, she considered wiping it clean, but didn't. It was better to let it stay. The mark of hesitation, proof that legitimacy was never given freely, only delayed. A clock ticked. 9 minutes passed. The two officers left, one glancing back at her before the door closed. She remained seated, motionless except for her breathing. Each inhale measured, each exhale invisible. She thought of how stillness had become its own form of resistance. Silence, when mastered, could become armor. The hallway light outside flickered again. Briefly, the reflection of the badge's silver edge caught the glow, shining like a small contained flare, then fading back into neutrality. A voice over the intercom broke the rhythm. "Agent Caldwell to room 713. She stood, adjusted her jacket, smoothed the hem of her sleeve. The briefcase handle fit neatly into her palm, an object shaped by control. She passed once more under the flickering light. It steadied just as she left its reach. At the end of the corridor, the door to room 713 stood closed, a plaque beside it reading, Inter-Agency Coordination Task Force. She paused before it, not to hesitate but to listen. From behind the door came the murmur of male voices, low and even, the cadence of familiarity. She knocked once. The voices paused. A second later, a man said, "Come in." She entered. The smell of burnt coffee and printer toner met her immediately, two scents that defined bureaucratic endurance. The room was arranged like every coordination meeting she had ever attended. Rectangular table, flag in the corner, projection screen blank but ready. 5 men looked up. Only one smiled. "Agent Caldwell," someone said, mispronouncing it Caldwell. She corrected him gently, "Caldwell." He nodded, but the correction didn't register. She took her seat at the table's far end, near the wall. The air vent above emitted a soft, steady hiss. Her badge, clipped to her jacket, reflected a sliver of fluorescent light onto the tabletop. No one else's did. Outside, through the window, the sky was an unbroken grey, featureless, efficient. Inside, the hum of the overhead light merged with the silence between introductions, and for a long, careful moment the room seemed to balance perfectly on that thin edge between civility and exclusion. The room smelled faintly of burnt coffee and old ambition. The table was long, rectangular, the surface a dull laminate that reflected the overhead fluorescent light in fractured streaks. 7 chairs were arranged around it, each spaced too precisely, as though the seating itself had been a negotiation. Agent Nia Caldwell sat near the far end, not quite at the corner, close enough to be seen but far enough to be disregarded. A tactical choice. The others had filled the central seats first. Captain Morrow flanked by his lieutenants, a representative from the Bureau's regional office, 2 local detectives. Their posture was casual, legs open, jackets off, authority made comfortable. Her briefcase rested neatly beside her chair. In front of her lay a single notepad, its first page blank except for a line drawn down the middle, habit from years of training. 1 column for what was said, 1 for what was meant. Captain Morrow began the meeting by clearing his throat, a small performance of control. "All right, folks. Appreciate everyone being here on short notice. We'll keep this quick. Got some overlap with bureau work on that trafficking case down in Southport." His voice carried the easy authority of someone used to being obeyed before being questioned. The accent was soft Southern, the vowels rounded just enough to sound approachable, never vulnerable. He gestured toward the empty coffee pot at the side table. "Help yourselves if you need a refill. It's strong, not good." Laughter, small male automatic, rolled around the table. Nia didn't move. Morrow continued, eyes glancing past her as though she were part of the decor. "We've got to figure out how to coordinate intel flow. The Bureau's folks have been doing their thing." A polite pause for effect. We just want to make sure everyone's rowing in the same direction. Nia watched the distribution of power unfold in posture. The regional agent leaned forward slightly, trying to appear collaborative. The local detectives slouched back, confident the meeting would not demand thought. Morrow sat at the head, both literally and narratively, spine straight, hands steepled. When he finally turned to her, it was with the faintly patronizing tone of a man reading off an agenda. "And this is, remind me, Miss Caldwell." "Agent Caldwell," she corrected softly, eyes steady. He smiled as though she had confirmed his point. "Right. Agent didn't mean any disrespect." The others didn't look up. One stirred his coffee, clinking the spoon against porcelain, sharp, rhythmic like a gavel. Morrow's smile thinned. "Heard you're our bureau liaison. New program, right? Diversity initiative or something." He said it without malice, but with that particular tone reserved for things one is obliged to respect but doesn't. Nia's reply was even, her voice measured enough to feel deliberate. "I'm here because of my field experience in interstate operations. Not an initiative." A silence followed, clean and brittle. The hum of the fluorescent lights filled it, that steady electrical drone that seemed to thrive on discomfort. Morrow shifted papers on the table, the gesture an excuse to break her gaze. "Well, we're all on the same side. Just got to learn to speak the same language." He smiled again. It did not reach his eyes. Nia noted the phrase, same language. She wrote nothing, but her pen hovered above the page. Across from her, one of the lieutenants spoke up, voice loud and confident. "We're not looking to reinvent the wheel. We've been doing this a long time, Captain." The captain nodded approvingly. "Exactly." He turned to Nia again. "Now I know you bureau folks like your paperwork, but out here we go by instinct. Gut feel. Community knows us. That kind of thing." She inclined her head, a small movement that could be mistaken for agreement. In truth, it was neither assent nor dissent, just observation. Morrow leaned back, clasping his hands. "So, any thoughts from the bureau side, Agent Caldwell?" It was an invitation crafted to expose, not include. She straightened slightly, her hands folding on the table. "The trafficking routes intersect with 3 jurisdictions. Coordination will reduce redundancy and potential leaks. I can handle data consolidation if your units can provide surveillance summaries by Friday." Her tone was calm, her diction immaculate. One of the detectives smirked. "That's a lot of big words for a Friday deadline." Laughter again. Quick, deflective. Morrow smiled, watching it spread before intervening. "Relax, boys. Agent Caldwell's just being thorough." He looked at her then, eyes narrowing slightly as though evaluating a specimen of professionalism too sharp for comfort. "I respect that. How you bureau folks dot every I. That's good." Pause. "Sometimes out here we just don't have time for that kind of perfection." She said nothing. Her silence wasn't empty. It was weight. It pressed against the room until even the hum of the light seemed to falter. The coffee pot hissed softly on the warmer, long since emptied. Morrow rose to pour himself a cup anyway, out of habit. The sound of liquid failing to appear filled the moment with quiet absurdity. He replaced the pot and turned. Someone want to make a fresh one? No one moved. Nia glanced at the pot, then at the men. None of them noticed her doing so. The pot became a mirror, reflecting a small unnoticed truth. Shared space, selective labor. The meeting dragged on. PowerPoint slides projected against the wall, their bullet points sterile and heavy with jargon. Morrow spoke of local control and mutual respect. The bureau agent from the regional office nodded often, but said little. When Morrow used her name again, it came softened into something else. "Sonia, what's your read on these numbers?" She caught the omission instantly. Title stripped. First name familiarity, an intimacy she hadn't offered. Agent Caldwell, she said, her tone unaltered. The correction hung in the air. Morrow smiled thinly, the smile of a man aware he's been challenged, but unwilling to acknowledge it. "Of course," he murmured, eyes already sliding away. By the time the projector clicked off, the room had grown warmer. The air was stale, thick with unspoken things. Morrow leaned back in his chair, stretching. "All right, that's enough paperwork for today. Let's keep this simple. Local command reports to me. Bureau channels flow through Agent..." He looked at her badge briefly. "Hassie Caldwell. We'll keep it tight, no overlap. Sound good?" Everyone nodded. She nodded too, though she knew tight meant controlled and controlled meant contained. The meeting adjourned. Chairs scraped against the floor, the sound harsh and final. Morrow extended a hand toward her, smiling again. "Pleasure meeting you, Agent. Hope the Bureau sends more like you." She shook his hand. His grip was firm, his smile empty. "I'm sure they will," she said. When they left, she remained seated for a moment. The room was suddenly still, only the faint drip of the coffee pot cooling on its burner. The air vent above whispered, carrying the sound of a conversation she couldn't make out from the hallway. She opened her notepad. The page was almost blank, save for one word written in small, deliberate handwriting at the top of the left column: language. She drew a line beneath it and closed the cover. As she stood, her chair made no sound. She walked to the side table, poured the last few drops of burnt coffee into a paper cup, and stared at the dark liquid. It shimmered faintly under the fluorescent light, opaque, bitter, unsweetened. She took a sip anyway. It tasted exactly like the room. Outside, the corridor stretched long and silent. The same beige carpet, the same hum of overhead lights, the same institutional rhythm. As she walked away, her reflection followed her faintly in the glass partitions. Steady, composed, untouchable, and though the meeting was over, the real conversation, the one about power, legitimacy and language, had only just begun. The city changed at dusk. Light receded not in color but in temperature, turning the world metallic. Storefront glass reflected sodium street lamps. Cars idled at corners with the resignation of beasts waiting for command. Somewhere overhead, a helicopter's searchlight drifted soundlessly across rooftops, indifferent to those below. Agent Nia Caldwell stood in the precinct garage, watching condensation curl from the tailpipes of patrol cars. The air was thick with the smell of oil and cold metal. She adjusted her coat, the collar brushing against her jaw like a reminder. Propriety even here. Across the garage, Officer Harlan Briggs spat into a paper cup and tossed it into the trash with deliberate aimlessness. His face was leathered from years of street work, grey stubble coarse as asphalt. He approached with the heavy gait of a man used to being obeyed long before being understood. "You the Bureau ride-along?" he asked, though the badge on her chest already answered. "Agent Caldwell. Field coordination." "Right." His mouth twitched somewhere between a smile and a test. "Hope you're not the note-taking type. We keep it simple out here." "I'm here to observe," she said evenly. "Nothing more." He nodded, opened the driver's door and slid in. "Then observe fast. We got a city to babysit." The patrol car's interior smelled of coffee, sweat and static. The dashboard camera blinked its small red light, steady, unblinking, a mechanical witness. Briggs grumbled as he adjusted the radio. "They got us babysitting some apartment blocks. Calls about noise, loitering, you know the type." "The type?" He glanced at her. "You'll see." Nia said nothing. Silence was her instrument. She let it fill the space between his words until he began to hear it. Outside, the streets unfurled, rows of brick buildings, neon signs, the occasional burst of laughter from a corner. The hum of the patrol car blended with the city's pulse. Briggs chewed gum loudly, eyes scanning the sidewalks. "You from around here, Agent?" "Born in Baltimore. Field training in D.C. Our city girl figures." He chuckled to himself. "We don't get many of your kind out here." She turned her head slightly. "My kind?" He smirked. "You know, bureau folks, suits, clean hands." Her expression didn't shift. "Of course." The red light of the camera blinked again, reflected faintly in her eyes. Truth recording truth. Half an hour passed before the first stop. A car rolled through a stop sign. Minor, almost imperceptible. Briggs flipped the siren once, a curt whoop of power. The vehicle, a black sedan, pulled over quickly, tires crunching against gravel. Briggs muttered, "Let's see what we've got." He switched off the siren, adjusted his belt, and stepped out. Nia followed, measured steps, her coat catching the wind. The driver's window rolled down halfway. Inside, a young black man, mid-20s, hoodie, hands visible on the wheel, eyes forward. "Mouth tight. Evening, officer," the man said. "Evening," Briggs replied, voice casual but edged. "You know why I stopped you?" "I rolled the sign. Sorry, I was license and registration." The man handed them over without hesitation. His hands trembled slightly, not from guilt but from anticipation. Briggs glanced at the license, then at the man. "You in a hurry, son?" No, sir. You from around here? Just visiting my aunt. On Birch Street, huh? Briggs smirked. That's where we get most of our noise complaints. Nia stood beside the passenger door, her gaze fixed on the dashboard camera through the windshield, its red light flashing steadily. It captured every word, every pause. Briggs leaned in closer to the window. Mind stepping out for a sec? The man blinked. Sir? Out of the car. Nia spoke then, voice calm, steady as the pulse of the camera. Officer Briggs, what's the probable cause for a search? Briggs didn't turn to her. Just want to make sure he's clean. That's not probable cause. Her tone didn't rise, but it carried weight, a procedural clarity that pierced his authority. The driver's eyes flicked toward her, uncertain, half hopeful. Briggs finally turned. Ma'am, with all due respect, this is my stop. And it's my jurisdiction too, per Interagency Order 713B, she replied, equally calm. We follow procedure. The wind stirred between them, cool and sharp. A piece of litter skittered across the pavement like a verdict. Briggs' jaw flexed. You always quote the handbook out loud? When necessary. He stared at her for a long moment, then at the camera blinking in the car. He knew the light was watching. He stepped back. Fine. Write him a warning then. Let's not waste Bureau resources on paperwork. She didn't move toward the driver. Sayro, stop your paperwork. For a moment, silence filled the street, the kind that vibrates with everything unsaid. Briggs huffed, returned to the car, and began scribbling the warning. The driver remained still, both hands on the wheel, breathing shallowly. Nia approached his window, her voice low, composed. Keep your eyes forward, she said gently. He'll finish soon. Thank you, he murmured, almost inaudible. She didn't answer. Her eyes remained on the camera light. Briggs handed the paper through the window without another word. Drive safe. Don't roll signs. The man took it, nodded quickly, and drove away. The patrol car was silent on the return to the precinct. Briggs's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. He turned off the radio, the silence now raw and deliberate. You made me look weak out there, he said finally. I made you look accountable. His mouth tightened. You don't know how this works. These people don't. Her voice cut through him. Calm, precise. Don't finish that sentence. He glanced at her, saw the steadiness in her eyes, and looked away. You think you can just walk in and lecture me? You don't know this city. I know patterns, she said. They don't change zip codes. For a moment the car seemed smaller. The red glow from the dashboard camera illuminated both their faces. One flushed, one still. Back in the garage, the engine ticked as it cooled. Briggs sat motionless, fingers drumming against the steering wheel. Nia opened her door, the sound of the hinge cutting the silence. She paused before stepping out. Officer Briggs, she said. That camera doesn't lie. Neither do I, he didn't respond. She stepped into the night. The air was damp, carrying the scent of rain that hadn't yet fallen. Streetlights flickered overhead, halos of fluorescent light burning through the dark. As she walked toward the entrance, she heard him spit again, this time not into a cup but onto the concrete, a gesture of contempt that landed just short of courage. She didn't turn. The sound was enough. Inside, under the lobby's fluorescent hum, she paused by the reflection of her badge in the glass. The same light from the street, now refracted through bureaucracy, discipline as defiance. Truth as record, silence as power. Outside, the red light of the patrol car's camera continued blinking in the dark, steady, impartial, eternal. It had seen everything. The precinct after hours was quieter than any church. The overhead lights had been dimmed to half power, leaving long corridors bathed in yellow-grey shadows. Desks lay deserted, their paperwork stacked like unfinished testimonies. Somewhere in the distance, a printer whirred once, stopped, and fell silent again. Agent Nia Caldwell walked down the hallway toward the evidence division, her heels clicking in precise intervals. Each sound echoed too loudly, as though the building itself wanted to remind her of her difference, her intrusion. Behind her, the sound of another set of footsteps, heavier, unhurried. She didn't turn. The air in the hallway was thick with the smell of disinfectant and worn linoleum. The hum of an old fluorescent fixture overhead trembled faintly. Like an uncertain verdict, Agent Caldwell. Briggs's voice, raspy, familiar and low. She stopped but didn't face him yet. Officer Briggs, she said, tone perfectly even. He closed the distance between them until his reflection appeared beside hers in the narrow hallway mirror mounted to the wall. The glass caught them both. her posture straight, his shoulders hunched forward, a coiled aggression lurking behind his eyes. He looked older than he had that morning. Tired, but in the dangerous way men get tired, when pride is all that's left to defend. "You think you embarrassed me," he said quietly. "Out there on the street, in front of that kid. I think I enforced policy." He laughed once, short and sharp. "Policy. You people love that word." "You people," she repeated, voice almost inaudible. He shrugged, but his jaw twitched. "Don't twist my words." "I don't have to." The silence that followed was taut, a wire stretched between restraint and rupture. The hum of the light above them filled it like static. Briggs stepped closer. His breath smelled faintly of coffee and something sourer. "You think the Bureau's got your back? You think those suits upstairs will protect you when this all blows over? They'll let you hang, same as anyone." Nia's reflection didn't move. "Then I'll stand." Her words landed like small stones, quiet but deliberate. Briggs's hand twitched. He looked toward the hallway camera, the small black orb mounted in the corner. Its red light blinked steadily, impassive. He stepped backward, out of its range. "Don't," she said softly. "That's evidence," he snorted. "You think I care about your evidence?" "I think you care about being seen." The mirror caught his face as she said it, his expression splitting between anger and something rawer. Shame. For a moment his reflection seemed to accuse him. He turned away from it, stepping closer. "Don't talk to me like you know who I am," he said. Her tone didn't change. "I don't. I know what you represent." That broke him. The words cut through the fragile civility of their world. His fist moved faster than thought. An instinct, not a decision. The sound was small but absolute. Flesh meeting bone. Nia's head jerked slightly, but she did not fall. Her hand came up open, not striking but redirecting. A movement too clean to be improvised, too controlled to be personal. She pivoted her weight, stepped aside, and let his momentum carry him forward. He hit the wall. Hard. For a moment, both stood still. The only sound was the fluorescent hum above them. Her palm rested on the small body camera clipped to his vest. Standard issue, always recording during patrol. It blinked red. Still on. Briggs realized it a second too late. Nia stepped back. Her voice was calm again, but now it held a precise coldness, surgical, unyielding. "You're still recording, officer." He looked down, panic flickering across his face. His hands flew to the clip. "Don't touch it," she said, "and that's tampering with evidence." He froze. The small red light continued blinking, painting faint pulses of color across the mirror. Their reflections looked fragmented, two figures flickering in judgment. "You hit a federal agent," she continued, voice low, deliberate. "On record. In your own precinct." He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. The silence pressed against them, heavy as guilt. Nia adjusted her jacket, the movement slow, deliberate. The bruise on her jaw was beginning to form, a small shadow of truth no bureaucracy could erase. "Why?" she asked. "Not as accusation. As documentation," his voice cracked. "You think you're better than us. That's why." Her eyes didn't waver. "No, I think I remember what we're supposed to be." For a long time neither moved. The building seemed to listen, pipes creaking, the hum of old wiring vibrating faintly in the walls. The red light blinked on, off onto Nia finally reached for the camera. Briggs flinched, but she didn't touch him. Instead, she lifted her phone, scanned the QR tag on his vest, standard synchronization procedure. The footage uploaded automatically to the precinct server, time-stamped, encrypted, a procedural act. A moral act. When the transfer completed, she stepped back. "You'll want to sit down before your supervisor calls," she said quietly. "It won't take long." Briggs stared at her. His eyes had lost their aggression. Now they held only disbelief, the hollow kind that comes when a man realizes the system he trusted no longer bends toward him. "You won't last here," he said. It sounded less like a threat and more like a prayer. "Maybe not," she replied. "But the truth will." She turned toward the exit. Her reflection in the mirror moved with her, steady, unbroken. Behind her, Briggs sank into the hallway bench, one hand on his face, the other clutching the body camera as though it might still absolve him. The red light kept blinking. Outside the precinct doors, night had deepened into near silence. The parking lot lights cast harsh cones of white that bled into darkness at the edges. Nia paused by her car, leaning slightly against the door. The air smelled of rain again, though none had fallen. She touched her jaw. The bruise was tender, pulsing faintly beneath her fingertips. She took out her phone, checked the upload log. Video received. Chain of custody initiated. Above her, the sky was colorless, neither black nor blue, just the neutral shade of accountability. She looked back once at the building. Through the front glass, the fluorescent light still burned. Behind it, the red blink of the camera flickered faintly like a heart still beating in a body that no longer deserved breath. The system had recorded its own violence. And for the first time, it could not look away. The hearing chamber was built to erase emotion. White walls, grey carpet, air scrubbed clean of scent. A long conference table divided the room like a border. Authority on one side, containment on the other. Fluorescent lights hummed softly overhead. Too bright for comfort, too sterile for truth. At the far end sat Agent Nia Caldwell, posture straight, hands resting neatly atop a closed folder. The bruise on her jaw had faded to a dull amber, visible only when the light hit it at an angle. She did not try to conceal it. Across from her, 3 men in dark suits conferred in low voices. Deputy Director Halpern, silver-haired, calm to the point of indifference. Chief Internal Affairs Officer Dunning, round glasses, a bureaucrat's measured diction. And Captain Morrow, representing local law enforcement, the man who had smiled too often in the briefing room, who now avoided her eyes entirely. Between them, on the table, sat a single object, the microphone. Its small red light glowed steadily, a mechanical promise that words spoken here would be recorded, archived, forgotten by everyone except the record. Halpern spoke first. His voice was even, practiced. Agent Caldwell, thank you for your cooperation. This hearing is an internal matter, not disciplinary at this stage. Our aim is to clarify the sequence of events. Clarify, she repeated, almost as if testing the weight of the word. Yes, Dunning said, leaning forward. From the footage, we see that an altercation occurred between yourself and Officer Harlan Briggs. We understand there were contextual factors at play. Contextual, she echoed again. Morrow shifted slightly, clearing his throat. Let's not overcomplicate this. It was a misunderstanding that escalated. Everyone in this building knows tensions have been high. Nia looked at him then directly. You're referring to his punch as a misunderstanding? Morrow blinked, smiled faintly. The same disarming smile from their first meeting, now brittle. I'm saying it doesn't have to ruin careers. The microphone caught the sound of her breath, one steady inhale, one deliberate exhale. Then quietly, it already ruined something. The men looked at each other but said nothing. The fluorescent light flickered once, briefly, before returning to its steady hum. Halpern gestured to the technician in the corner. Play the footage. The screen came alive with colorless motion, the hallway dim, sterile. Briggs's voice echoed through the speakers. You think you embarrassed me? Nia's reply, I enforced policy. Then the swing. The sound was small but final. The panel flinched, all 3 at once. Not at the violence itself, but at its undeniability. They watched her pivot, redirect, step aside. Watched Briggs collide with the wall. Watched her hand reach toward the camera. The blinking red light filled the screen, pulsing like a wound that refused to close. When it ended, silence returned. The machine clicked softly as it powered down. Dunning broke first. The footage is unambiguous. Morrow folded his arms. It's also unfortunate. We all know Briggs isn't that kind of man. Nia spoke evenly. He became that kind of man the moment his fist moved. Morrow's mouth tightened. You provoked him. Her gaze didn't waver. By existing in uniform? No one answered. The silence lengthened until it became unbearable. Halpern leaned forward, voice calm, managerial. Agent Caldwell, no one here is disputing that you were assaulted. But our job is to manage perception. This incident, if publicized, could undermine interagency cooperation. Cooperation, she repeated, as if naming something extinct. Or complicity. He paused, just long enough to betray the truth. We prefer to resolve these things internally. Nia sat very still. The microphone's red light reflected off her jaw, catching the faint outline of the bruise. She adjusted her posture slightly, straight-backed, deliberate. Control visible and precise. Then let the record show, she said, that internal resolution means silence. Halpern frowned. No one's asking for silence. We're asking for discretion. Dunning nodded. Exactly. The footage will remain sealed. Officer Briggs will be reassigned pending counseling and suspension. You'll continue in your role with commendation for restraint. It's the cleanest path forward. Nia looked down at the table, then at the microphone. The red light pulsed gently against the polished surface, its reflection bending slightly in the lacquer. Clean, she said. That's one word for it. She opened her folder. Inside lay a single sheet of paper, a printed chain of custody record from the uploaded footage, time-stamped, authenticated, distributed to multiple secure recipients. I already forwarded the recording to Federal Oversight and the Department of Justice, she said quietly. The air changed. Halpin's face went blank, and the practiced neutrality of a man calculating consequences. Dunning's pen froze mid-scribble. Morrow exhaled sharply through his nose. You overstepped protocol, Halpin said. No, she replied. I followed the one that matters. For the first time, her voice carried weight beyond calmness, a resonance born of moral certainty. Each word was precise, surgical, impossible to refute. The Bureau Handbook states, when evidence of criminal conduct arises within interagency operations, the obligation to report supersedes chain of command confidentiality. I followed procedure. Halpin leaned back slowly. You realize what you've done? Yes. And you're comfortable with the fallout? Comfort, she said, is the enemy of justice. Her tone was so measured that even Morrow, for a fleeting second, seemed to shrink beneath it. The silence that followed stretched until it became structural. It filled the air vents, the crevices of the table, the sterile corners of the room. The institution, vast and self-protective, seemed to hesitate, as if the machinery itself had forgotten its script. Finally, Halpin spoke again, his voice quieter. This will become public. It should. He nodded once, the smallest acknowledgement of inevitability. Dunning closed his folder. This hearing is adjourned. The gavel wasn't struck. No one rose immediately. The men sat in their tailored stillness, watching her as if waiting for her to retract the moment, to make the system comfortable again. She didn't. Instead, she leaned forward slightly, her mouth close enough for the microphone to catch every syllable. Let the record show, she said. That silence was offered and declined. Then she stood. The chair legs scraped the floor in a sound both jarring and final. Outside, the corridor was empty. The air felt heavier now, like something had cracked in the building's foundation, not visibly but deeply. She walked past the glass walls, the identical chairs, the hum of fluorescent light. The same architecture that had once contained her now seemed smaller, exposed. At the far end of the hall, she paused before a window. Her reflection hovered faintly in the glass, steady, backlit by the sterile glow behind her. In her reflection, the bruise on her jaw was just visible, faint but undeniable. She reached up not to touch it, but to acknowledge it, the mark left not just by one man's violence, but by the system that had made room for it. The fluorescent light above flickered once more, briefly breaking the illusion of uniform brightness. Inside that flicker, the truth had been recorded, and for the first time it would stay that way. Dawn came like an unwelcome truth, pale, deliberate, revealing everything it touched. The lobby was the same. The marble still gleamed, the lights still hummed with bureaucratic precision. The security scanner pulsed its thin blue line across the entryway, like a heartbeat too regular to be human. The same guard stood behind the glass partition, his uniform crisp, his expression unreadable, yet nothing was the same. Nia Caldwell stepped through the metal detector, her movements slow, exact. The wheels of her small case rolled softly across the polished floor. Her shoes echoed against the marble in the same rhythm as before, but the sound had changed, no longer uncertain, no longer questioning its right to be there. She approached the scanner gate, where she had been delayed on her first day. The same ID badge hung from her neck, photo, name, clearance level. The same laminated rectangle that had once been a question mark. She held it up. The guard hesitated, just for a fraction of a second, then scanned it. The light turned green immediately this time. No second scan, no pause. The soft beep echoed through the cavernous lobby like a verdict reversed. She continued toward the glass doors. The lobby's air was cold, filtered through unseen ducts, the kind of air that had no scent, no history. The fluorescent lights above buzzed faintly, washing the space in an artificial dawn, even as real sunlight began to creep through the glass facade. As she passed the security desk, the guard spoke barely above a whisper. "Agent Caldwell." She stopped, turned slightly. His voice was careful, professional, but softer than before. "Saw the footage," he said. "Didn't think they'd let it out." "They didn't," she replied. "It got out anyway." He nodded once, eyes dropping to his screen. "Be careful out there." "I always am," she walked on. The exchange was brief, almost invisible, but it carried the quiet weight of recognition. At the far end of the lobby, the revolving glass door waited, its panels catching the first rays of morning. Beyond it, she could already see the crowd forming. Cameras, microphones, the restless choreography of media anticipation. The first flashbulb went off before she even stepped outside. Then another. She paused inside the revolving door, half-shadowed, the glass surrounding her like a capsule. Through the transparent walls, faces blurred and flickered, reporters, officers, passers-by, each reflecting a version of the story. Some saw courage, others saw betrayal. The hum of the lights above deepened, vibrating faintly in the metal frame. She raised a hand to her badge, letting the light strike it. The reflection glinted sharply, a flare of brightness cutting across the glass. Her own face appeared briefly in the reflection, overlaid with the word "Federal Agent Not Questioned." Not conditional, simply stated. When she stepped out, the air was colder than she expected. The street smelled of exhaust, rain, and coffee, the scent of a city waking to itself. Reporters surged forward, microphones extended. "Agent Caldwell, any comment on the investigation? Do you believe the department covered it up? Is this the start of wider reform?" The questions tumbled over each other, desperate to turn her into a headline. She said nothing. Her silence was not absence. It was precision. A refusal to let the noise define the meaning. She walked through them, eyes steady, stride measured. Each flash of a camera caught her in a new frame, sometimes defiant, sometimes serene, sometimes unreadable. She gave them nothing else. The sound of her heels against the pavement was louder than the reporters' voices. Across the street, traffic lights blinked from red to green, indifferent to history. Workers stepped off buses, coffee in hand, unaware or unconcerned about the hearing that had just taken place 3 floors above the city's waking hum. In the building's reflection, she could see them all, it moving, working, obeying signals, the same machine continuing, unbroken. Yet beneath the surface of its rhythm, something had shifted. A single entry in a record, a chain of custody preserved. A silence declined. She stopped at the edge of the crosswalk, waiting for the signal. The light changed and she crossed. The badge around her neck swayed gently, catching the morning sun. The sunlight was sharp now, too bright to look at directly. It struck the glass of the building behind her, scattering across the marble floor inside. For the first time, the cold lobby reflected light instead of consuming it. At the corner, she turned back once. The building loomed behind her, federal, faceless, precise. Its windows caught the rising sun like mirrors, giving nothing back but glare. From this distance, the people outside the entrance looked small, their cameras like insects around a light. Inside, men in suits would already be making calls, drafting statements, tightening the machinery of containment. The system would go on. It always did. Files would be redacted, careers salvaged, language softened until it lost its moral edges. But the footage existed. The record existed. Her voice existed, not in sound, but in the silence she had chosen. She reached into her coat pocket, pulled out the notepad she had carried since the first day, the one she had almost never written in. She opened it. The pages were mostly blank, except for one sentence written neatly at the top of the final page. "The truth does not need to be loud to be heard." She tore the page out and let it fall into a public trash bin. The rest of the pad, the empty pages, one she kept. Then she walked on into the morning. Behind her, the building's automatic doors closed with a soft hiss. The seal of bureaucracy re-established itself, sterile and intact. Inside, the hum resumed. The marble floors gleamed, the scanner lights blinked, and the lobby prepared for another day. New arrivals, new clearances, new silences. From above, the city began to wake. Buses rumbled, pigeons scattered from streetlights, and office towers flickered to life, one fluorescent bulb at a time. The great machinery of authority turned over again. indifferent, vast, relentless, but somewhere in its circuitry, faint and persistent, a new signal pulsed, the echo of a refusal, recorded and unedited. And in that quiet hour between night and morning, the system kept running. But it would never again be able to pretend it hadn't been seen.